What's going on, guys? Matic here, and today what we're going to go over is on how to make a heavyweight training sword for this from your local hardware store. Okay, so before we start, what we need to figure out is why we would want a heavyweight training tool for any of our weapons, whether it's sword, knife, or anything along that line, spear, bow, whatever. And it's mainly because we technically do have training replicas for the real thing, but the problem is they're usually made out of material that makes them substantially lighter than the real thing. And it's great when you're first learning because you don't want to put too much stress on your joints or anything like that. You mainly want to get used to doing the basic technique and getting it right before you start using the real thing, which is usually quite a bit heavier. What I mean by that is that for this sword that we're going to be replicating, the sword itself is 2 pounds and just over 11 ounces. But any kind of Vulcan or training sword that's close to this actually has a much longer handle than your standard sword or training sword. It's almost half the weight, and which is fine when you're first beginning training, again, to understand your basic moveset. But the only thing I have close to this weight is literally this sword itself, and this is sharp. I've actually, doing a draw cut, I have sliced my thumb, and you don't want that. You don't want to injure yourself during training. So you need something that's close to or even more of the weight of the real thing, so that your muscles and your tendons and your joints can strengthen to handle the stress of using your preferred weapon. Now, having said that, there's three main things that we kind of need to know about our original weapon that we need to make the training weapon. The first is how long is the handle, or your preferred handle, how long the actual blade itself is, or from the end of your handle to the end of the blade, and on how thick your blade is, and kind of like how thick the handle, but that's generally the same. So for this weapon itself, the handle is just over 13¼ inches. From the end of the handle to the tip of the blade is it's basically about 29 inches, maybe a little bit shorter. And the thickness here, where the collar is, the habaki, is about 1/4 inch. It might be a hair or so, plus or minus. So all of that taken into account gives me a weight of about 45 ounces, or 45 ounces, or 2 pounds and 11 ounces. So, and since I said that we're going to be using common materials from your local hardware store, I got my stuff from Lowe's. I went, and the metal that I bought it's a 3/16 thickness, so it's 1/16 of an inch thinner, but I'm going to be using this whole 2-inch portion. The original sword is about 1.5 inches at the widest, so that's where I'm compensating most of my mass and my weight. Overall length is 48 inches, so I'm basically going to be cutting off this whole section here. And just the bar itself, after I cut everything off, gives me about, 65 ounces? So almost just a pound less than the whole bar itself. So it's roughly going to be about 2 pounds just for the steel. Then for my handle material, I want to use a heavier type wood, so not pine. So this is a oak or red oak. This is 3 inches wide by a 1/2 inch. I will be shaving that down some to properly fit the handle. And I have plenty. This is a 4 foot length. And I think just the wood and the metal bar itself cost me, I'm pretty sure, under $25, which is pretty cheap. So after that, literally all you gotta do, if you already have drill bits and some screws or something like that, it's cut the metal, cut the wood, screw everything in, and like just kind of shape the handle. And we're kind of going to be going over that, and I'll show you the finished product. All right, and so we are done, and here it is. It's a little fugly, but that's fine. It's not meant to be pretty, it's meant to work. The tip up here, I kind of just gave a little angle cut, just so depending on what kind of practice I'm doing, I know exactly where my edge is. And again, this is a very, very simple build. Total time, actual working hours is about 4 hours. This is day 2, mainly because I had to let the Gorilla Glue dry here for the handle. But, and then about an extra hour for me to drill and tap for all these screws. If you just want to glue, then this thing's like done in like 3 hours. It's completely up to you. And our final build weight is 4 pounds and 3 ounces compared to the real sword that we were taking it from, which was 2 pounds and 11 ounces. So we're a full 1.5 pounds heavier than our real weapon. So our training weapon is now a 1.5 pounds heavier. The balance point, which is something I also checked, is maybe about it's about 1.5 inches, maybe just a touch, 1.5 inches higher up the blade. But that's mainly because, you know, it's fatter, heavier, and I don't have really any weight back here. If I wanted to take the extra steps, I could put like some kind of counterweight back here to move the point of balance, but that's not really what I'm going for. However, if you guys want me to, I can make a more closely identical training tool. It'll still be heavy. I would have to actually buy or order metal that's 1/4 inch, which would give me all that. 1/4 inch thick, and I will make a guard, make a habaki, make the correct handle, and I'll make a sheath for it. That way we can use a pretty much perfect replica of our real sword that's heavier, but we can still do all of the same techniques, including draw cuts and all that mess. Having to manipulate our sheath or whatnot. But this was fun. This was a cool, quick project that I've kind of wanted to do for a little while, mainly because I've looked online for, if you look online for heavy training swords, they're called SUPERHEAVY. And they're really not that much heavier. If anything, they're maybe the same weight as a real sword, but they're also like substantially longer. Which, depending on what you're trying to do, can really mess up your distance for when you're training. So this one, it's literally the exact same length as the model we took it from, but it's a monstrously heavier weapon. And I like it, and I'm definitely going to use it. Again, took about 4 hours total working time. And that's only because I did the extra step for the taps, which is something that I want to do. I'm Matic, and I'll see you guys next time.